Okay.
Okay, so today we are going to talk about the politics again. So probably you will say, hey, morning is enough. Politics is not our business. You know what? Politics, it is our business, because politics is always the number one factor influence and change affect your business anywhere, anytime, in any country. So it's not that not important. It is very important. So today we have a chance to talk to Karin Litzcke. Hey, welcome, Karin.
Thank you very much. Morning.
Is that my pronunciation right, Litzcke?
Close enough.
Okay,
I knew who you meant.
Okay, that's perfect. So Litzcke is running by-election in Vancouver, Mount Pleasant, and it's coming this month. So by-election in BC, and it's not that much, not that popular, but it's still, and it will be one seat in the government. So today we are going to talk to Karin and see what's Karin's idea about the business. And before that, and I just want Karin know, and our channel, our audience is a business related, property related. So most of the people will be business owners or property owners. And so we will talk about the business and the properties most of the time. But before that, and Karin, could you please tell us more about yourself? We want to know more about you, your story, your background, who you are.
Okay, I'll try. So I've been living in Strathcona in close to Chinatown for 30 years. Before that, I was born in Vancouver. My parents were immigrants, though. I learned English as a very young child. So yeah, lifelong Vancouverite, although I've come and gone a little bit. I began my adult life as a dietitian. So I went to university. I did an undergrad degree in nutrition, and then I went and did an MBA, and then I stayed home for 25 years and raised my kids. And that was really a formative experience for me, because I became very involved in their school, which was Seymour School here in Strathcona, and I learned a lot about how the schools are teaching kids to read. And I realized that they were not using the most effective methods, and that in fact the system prefers the schools not to use the most effective methods, because when the kids don't do very well, then the system can grow around them. Because when you have special needs kids, you need extra staff, you need extra professional development, you need extra buildings, you need So the system really grows around, and I realize it's like any bureaucracy, it grows by not being very effective.
Okay.
And so I spent a lot of time during those years talking to other parents who were in the school, and heard about what they wanted the system to give to their kids. And parents universally want their kids to do well. And to do as well as possible. And so they were frustrated. All kinds of parents, it's not just about parents at a certain socioeconomic class or parents of a certain ethnicity. All parents want their kids to do well. And I learned that there is no reason why the school system cannot do better, other than the fact that, it's too big and is more interested in its own thriving than in kids thriving. So this was a really formative experience for me. And it's really what drove me to get involved. Actually, I got involved first in the legal side of education, after I had sort of advocated for years and been involved with talking to parents and being on school board committees and stuff. I actually went to court on behalf of parents as a self-represented litigant, because the Ministry of Education and the BC Teachers Federation had a big court case about how they would bargain how many kids are in a class. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, this is a really interesting thing that they are not having any parent representatives in the court, because this determines where kids are going to go to school. So when you wake up in the morning, how far you have to take your child to school is being decided in this court case. And there is nobody in the court speaking for parent interests and for their ability to make these kinds of decisions for themselves. Where your kid goes to school, that kind of controls your day, right? That's where, you're going to work, where you're going to drop them off or whatever.
Yeah.
So I made several court applications by myself to try to bring, as an intervener, to try to bring the parent voice into the courtroom. Now, I was not successful, but it really drove home to me how little the system is calibrated around serving the actual public needs, that we're just not even in the room when they are making these decisions. We're not at the bargaining table when they're determining, the wages are the biggest component of the education budget. We're not at the bargaining table. We don't have our own bargaining table.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody's bargaining with parents.
Yeah.
We have one vote.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, they just filter us out and they do their thing. So these were really formative experiences for me. And this is the biggest thing that I bring, I think, into the political arena, is that there is a public need, and the systems, all the systems, whether it's the legal system, the education system, the healthcare system, they're not that concerned about the public's need. And we don't have a way to speak to them. So I would like, I really feel that having listened for so many years, I can represent that voice and those needs.
Yeah, that's really good. So you told us about the beginning of your politics career already, but I still want to know, as what I know, that the politics is very dirty. It's very complicated, and so many people, just like what I mentioned, and the business people, they want to stay away from the politics. So you still decided to go to the politics career, be involved. So what made you so brave and want to be involved with this kind of very complicated situation? What inspired you? And probably there's someone or some like a situation and made you make the final decision. Let me do it. And what is that?
Well, I think it's funny you mentioned the word brave, because when I was growing up, my parents were still landed immigrants, what's called now PR, and they never dared to show their political opinions. And ironically, we lived in a very right-wing neighborhood in Point Grey, which was a working class neighborhood at the time, but it was still quite right-wing. And they never put up a lawn sign. They didn't talk to the neighbors about politics. They would never do any of that thing. And I thought, well, I don't have to be afraid like that, because I was born here. So I don't have this fear. And so I have never been afraid of speaking up. And so when, and what I found also in the school system was that a lot of the parents that I was talking to were also, they were immigrants, or they had jobs that they were worried about. They were very afraid that maybe the teachers wouldn't like them. And I just didn't care. I mean, it doesn't matter to me if people like me or not. My abiding interest is in raising healthy, capable children. And I think that is what most parents want for their kids. And so I'll challenge anybody who's working against that goal. If it was something that the school principal was doing that the parents were a little concerned about, I would go to the principal and talk to them. So I've never had that fear. And I realized over and over again that it is these decisions that are being made in government and in court that control how things are going right at the community level. And so if other people were afraid, then I felt like it was my job to go and do. I mean, and other people have good reasons to be afraid. I have to make that clear. I've never, because I was a stay-at-home mom, I wasn't afraid somebody was going to fire me. There's a certain power.
Right.
As long as my husband didn't fire me, I was fine. So I felt that it was my job to step forward and speak for people who could not speak for one reason or another. And so, yeah, it's because I feel that I've listened to people for so long. I understand their needs. I have the ability to speak. And so, I mean, democracy, citizenship, to me, is a responsibility. We all should be bringing what we can to this arena. And so I am happy to step forward and carry that responsibility, even if it is just to go, to run in an election, as we were saying before we went on air, that you and I both ran in the civic election. I was running as a trustee. Even if we don't win, by going on the ballot, we make it a choice. Otherwise, it's just a coronation, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, at minimum, that's what I can do. And so that's my job as a citizen, as far as I can see it.
That's good. So you are naturally brave enough to do that, and you feel it's your obligation to fight for parents, fight for yourself. That's really good. That's a really major thing, and for a leader. And I'm very glad to hear about that. And also, I noticed in your Facebook or somewhere, and you mentioned you are a blue collar worker, and I feel so good about that, because so many people, they want to hide these kind of things. They don't want to show people they are high end or they're these kind of things. And you just tell people you're a blue collar worker, and I think you are honest about this. And from this kind of details, I think you're an honest person. And also, I noticed that you have the MBA degree, and it's about business. So let's talk about the business as a blue collar worker or whatever worker you are, and you are part of the economy, and you are part of the business. For me, any work is a business. It doesn't matter you're an employee or you're a business owner. You're a businessman. So it's just consider it in different way. So if you are elected, how will you help the small business owners? And as we know, for the past 3 years, and the business owners, especially for the small business owners, experienced a very difficult time. First of all, it's the pandemic. It's scary. And then the war. And then the inflation rate is very high. And then the interest rate is very high, like right now. And I got so many people complaining to me, hey, Morning, I cannot afford this business anymore. I cannot pay the salary. I cannot pay the rent. And I cannot survive anymore. Everything, increased. The material cost and the labor cost and the shipping cost, everything is increasing. And how can we survive? And so I'm very glad, and you have the MBA and degree, so you understand the business, you know what's going on. So how and what will you do and to help the small business owners and after you get elected?
Okay, so let's begin by saying that because this is a by-election and the Conservative Party of BC is ramping up for the next general election, at this point, I will be a voice in the legislature, but we won't be governing. So the things that I would speak out for, I can say what I would speak out for. I can't say what kind of policies I would implement because I won't be having policy-making power. But I would say one of the, so really all the affordability issues that you mentioned are based on a couple of things. One is the amount of government infrastructure that we pay for through our tax burden. And that's tax municipally, it's tax provincially, it's tax federally. It's an overwhelming tax burden. And then there's the sales tax, the various taxes on energy in particular, taxes on food. There's so many that the infrastructure that we carry is incredible. And when I was talking earlier about how the education system just grows and grows and feeds itself without actually accomplishing its central mission, this to me is a concern in everything in everything concerning the business environment. And so the cost of fuel, that's what contributes in large part to a lot of the costs that hit businesses. Right. Yeah. Relevant to Strathcona in particular is the issue of street safety. And one of the things that I see in my work is how hard the impacts of street disorder land on small businesses. So these doorways that people are sleeping in and urinating in, who do you think cleans that up? The cost of shoplifting. Who carries that? And and I find it so interesting, I don't think anybody really understands how hard, especially retail employees work. And you picture you're some 16 or 18-year-old kid, you're getting your first job in like some clothing store downtown or something, and you're kind of excited about the brand or whatever you're working for. And what you end up doing is dealing with people who are peeing in the doorway and coming in and trying to steal the merchandise. Like, how do we put that burden on these 16 and 18-year-old kids in their first job and on the businesses that are trying to retain employees, trying to attract and retain employees, not to mention having customers come to their store? So these are, to me, they are very pragmatic issues, sort of at the street level. So for me, there is the burden of government, there's the tax burden, there is the cost of public disorder, which I feel falls disproportionately on businesses, and just the general affordability framework around inflation and the cost of goods, cost of energy, mainly I think the cost of energy. I understand the cost of gas right now in Alberta is $1.45 a liter.
Yeah, so yeah, that's right. Like what you mentioned, the street problem, the gas problem, there's so many problems. It's not an easy job to fix it. And also you mentioned it's a by election only. You are not going to have the power enough to fix the problem. But for me and anyone they are running, they are not only the decision maker after elected, and they will be the influencer as well. And their ideas, their policies, they will influence everyone around them, or people even they don't know, because people consider them as a leader. Even just in case you are not elected, you are still the leader and the influencer, and because you got so many followers and people around you. So your idea about business, your idea about our economy is very important to me. So that's why I want to understand what's going on with your brain, what you're thinking, and what you want to do. So tell me some exact things you want to do, and do you have any plan want to help the small business owners? And just like you mentioned, maybe the gas, the cost, or the street problem, is there any idea you want to do? And after you get elected, you want to propose some act, or you want to tell people and influence people about something and about business?
Well, I'll focus on the street issue because I think it's very relevant to businesses in Strathcona or in Vancouver, Mount Pleasant. And I think one of the biggest issues is the way that the government is dealing with people who are drug addicted, mentally ill, or in fact outright just of criminal intent. But the priority has appeared to be to not deal with the public impact of those problems. And we know that when Riverview was closed by the NDP government in the 1990s, that leaders in Chinatown predicted that all those people would find their way to the downtown east side and become addicted to drugs. And that's exactly what's happened. So and we've had generations of people in that situation, the sort of mixed mental health addictions problem. And we seem, the government both the Liberals and the NDP have really failed to focus on a solution that provides those individuals themselves with the best chance of recovery and allows society to function despite the fact that we have this population. And so one of the things I think that needs to be done is to call out the government on some of the policies they have that are just failing to address this problem or aggravating it. Mm-hmm. And one of the ones that we're focusing on as the Conservative Party of BC is this safe supply proposal. And there is no such thing as safe supply of these of hard drugs. And where there is, even if it were possible, it is not possible to do that kind of thing on the street, where these drugs that you're supplying to people are flowing out into the community and probably reaching non-drug users and getting them addicted. So we have a through-going problem. And again, the effect on small business seems indirect, but in fact, we're talking about the supply of good workers. We're talking about the future generation of entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the citizens who will be working enough to patronize businesses. Right. So this is sort of the organic network that exists around business, and business doesn't exist in isolation. It's totally dependent on all these other factors.
That's true.
So to me, the business itself, that's the business owner's prerogative, but the government needs to create an environment in which economic prosperity can occur. And so that's what I would be speaking to in the legislature. So on the subject, so for the Downtown East Side in particular, for Chinatown, it would be the issue of safe supply. And then there is just pulling back on some of these insanely high government expenditures on completely extraneous and unnecessary things that are burdening us all, and that trickle down to affect businesses. Businesses, it's like it's like the coal face. It's where these things are felt. So we have all the social programs. We have the which are necessary for certain demographics, but there seems to be a drive to a point where we're providing like half the population with permanent social housing. Mm-hmm. Social housing, there's two populations who need it. There's a population that has a long-term lifetime need, understood, totally willing to provide that. Yeah. And then there's a population that has a short-term need for housing assistance while they recover and hopefully become self-sufficient again. Mm-hmm. And but the constant construction of more and more social housing tells us that it's not being used for short-term relief. It's being used, again, we're providing lifetime housing to everybody. And that's one of the reasons why the market, it's one of many reasons why the housing market in Vancouver keeps driving to luxury, because we have to support this massive, and it's like a hamster wheel or a self-fulfilling prophecy, where the market only provides luxury housing. So we have no normal housing to which people in social housing can transfer over. Yeah. And then we need more social housing because all we have is luxury. So it's an insane cycle that needs to be broken. And so perhaps what they need is somebody in the legislature who will point that out. I don't know. All I can do is try.
Okay, that's really good. You mentioned the housing problem already. So Karin, you just mentioned the house market, and that's what I'm going to talk about. This topic is a big topic. Nobody is happy right now, and especially for the past 12 months or 1 year around that. And the tenants, they are paying sky-high rents, not only the last year. And also it's still increasing. And also for the landlords, they are not happy too. And they are paying, very high mortgage payment monthly, and the interest rate is very high. And for other people related to properties like builders, developers, realtors, and the renovation company, nobody's happy and nobody's making money. And what's going on? Something's wrong. I don't know the solution, but I know something is wrong. And so if you are reelected and as a provincial level decision maker, I know you have so much power, and even you focused on school system, but you still have the power and to propose something and to say yes or no to something. So what's your plan? What do you want to do and to make everybody happy? I think it's not possible, right?
Probably not. And there are certain things you can't control. you can certainly limit the extent to which things are just helplessly at the mercy of people who are somehow feathering their nest on the basis of the situation. So yeah, I was alluding earlier to the fact that social housing, the burden of supplying social housing to what seems like a greater and greater proportion of the population, is an economic burden that we all carry, including small business. But the thing that I said earlier about just the burden of government regulation, and nowhere is this more clear than in the development market. As I understand it, the simple process of getting a building permit in Vancouver is astronomical, and that alone might drive a developer to say, well, I have to push my plans into the luxury market, because unless I sell at luxury prices, I can't recoup this money I'm paying to the city. So those costs, they come in at, I mean, not only, of course, do developers pay taxes, and they have to pay these astronomical land costs, but also, so they're paying these permitting fees, just the cost of going through the permitting process. And that's not just straight up the money they have to pay to the city. It's also that they have to have staff who will engage with the city and walk through this process.
Right.
So there's a whole layer of employment within the development industry that is essentially mirrors the bureaucracy of the city. Yeah. There are various sorts of development cost levies that are increasing the price. And then what's not talked about very often is how much this drive to green building, so-called in green, I mean, it's not green, but it's supposedly environment friendly, yeah, how much that is adding to building costs, not only to building costs, but again, to the cost of dealing with the bureaucracy. Right. So now you've got not just your people who are dealing with the building permit in the first place, mm-hmm, and the design, but you've also got to hire a whole bunch of staff to come up with these green standards. And frankly, I'm not sure how green these standards really are. They're supposed to be reducing emissions, mm-hmm, that the building would produce from heating and cooling, for example. Mm-hmm. But how much more are we using in the way of materials, in the way of transportation? How much I'm not sure they're saving as many emissions as they think they are, mm-hmm, especially when you consider all these extra people who have to come to work every day. Okay. You know, it's insane how much extra cost there is in the development process. And anybody who thinks that is just in the developer's pocket can forget it. All of this trickles down, because they will only do the work they have if they can make, if they can at least meet their costs.
That's absolutely the truth. Right? Yeah.
So basically, when we so the other thing, of course, is community amenity contributions, so that we have come to we've become addicted, the city has become addicted to building community amenities, such as community centers, for example, out of developers' pockets. And that does two things. It increases the cost of housing, again, pushes it into the luxury realm, right, where we're only going to appeal to an international market because nobody can afford that on a local salary. Yeah. And secondly, the whole process of, let's say, building a new community center, mm-hmm, gets taken out of the democratic realm. Mm-hmm. So it's in the back rooms between the city and the developer that they'll put a community center here. But that's our job, is to say, hey, we need a new community center. Let's talk about what we want. Let's go to the city. Yeah. While this sounds like city politics, it's important to say that that the province actually has jurisdiction over the whole province. Yeah, the city government operates on an administrative arrangement, the Vancouver Charter, under provincial oversight. So when things are going crazy in the city for one reason or another, it does fall to the province to step in. And so as an MLA, I think it's important to take a leadership role when things, especially, in our local community, in this riding, yeah, all these pressures are coming together.
Yeah, that's true.
So, you know, I think the MLA really does need to take a leadership role at relieving some of those pressures. Standing up and saying, hey, this is what's going on. Because people don't know. It all stays behind closed doors. And then all of a sudden, you know, there's a new building, there's a new community center. How did all that happen? We have no idea.
No.
So yeah, we need to learn more about these processes and get more involved as citizens. And we need to have them meeting our needs. I think the 105 Kiefer project that's being discussed right now in Chinatown is a really interesting kind of a touch point. There's a real firestorm around it. And I think it's an ideal opportunity to start talking about the pressures that create that bring a developer to propose a luxury building in the middle of this neighborhood when that's the last thing we need.
Yeah, it will be a challenge for you, especially for this riding. And so all the problems come to this riding area. And for the housing, it's very complicated. Just like you mentioned, you must work with the city level. And so cooperate with them and find out the solution. It's not an easy job. I totally understand. But, you know, so many people, they blame on developers only. They think, oh, the developer should pay for this, pay for that. You know what? They will pass all the costs to the tenants, the buyers, just like what you mentioned. So it's like an ecosystem. So do you have any exact plan, and what will you do just after you elected? And so that, like what you said, only 1.5 years probably, and maybe, right? So what kind of like a proposal, what kind of a plan, what kind of like action you want to take after you elected? Do you have any plan right now?
On the on the housing front, I think what I would like to do is look at how social housing is being used. I would like to find out, I would like to look at the process by which people with short-term housing needs and who need, you know, within say 5, maybe 10 years of being in social housing, I'd like to look at the process by which the opportunities they have or don't have to move into the marketplace. And why, and to me, the issue of luxury versus ordinary housing is absolutely crucial. What is pushing us to build so much luxury housing? Because that drives, that captures, it traps people in social housing long term, and that doesn't serve anybody. So we need this middle ground in housing. We need, and the way I like to put it is, we don't need more housing with granite countertops. We need housing with arborite countertops. Just ordinary places, you know, just nothing extravagant, just a place that people can call home, can make their home. You know, kids who are moving out of home for the first time to, you know, rent or buy an apartment, people who are downsizing out of their single family homes as they age. You know, young couples that are starting out and maybe having their first child, they don't need granite countertops. They don't need, you know, marble shower enclosures. They just need a clean, you know, solid building in which they can be comfortable and safe. And so this luxury thing, this is a pivot around which everything else is going wrong, in my view. And I would like to investigate that, figure out what the linchpin is, and then make a proposal that would start to unravel this mess.
That's really good, and I'm so glad to hear about your policies, your ideas, and thank you very much for sharing all these kind of plans and your idea. And so that's related, business related and property related. So let's go back to the politics again. So tell us the top 3 reasons why people should vote you. And so please tell us.
Okay, so I feel that there are things going on within government that the public does not agree with, but somehow the conversation about these has been suppressed. One of the topics that I'm very concerned about is the degree to which we are being forced to talk as if boys can turn into girls and girls can turn into boys. So this whole issue of gender ideology or gender theory. This is is very much an issue within schools, very much an issue even within, well, throughout government and even in the courts. This issue of being asked to give your gender pronouns is biasing the courts, which completely, I mean, this is, at that level, it becomes a foundational issue of democratic survival. If our courts are that biased in favor of an ideology, we might as well not have a separation of church and state, because that's more or less just, it's a belief system that's being imposed through our legal system. So that is one thing. I believe I am the only candidate on the ballot in this by-election in Vancouver Mount Pleasant who will even speak about that, much less make a proposal about it. And so anybody who's concerned about that issue, that would definitely be a reason to vote BC Conservative. We are also the party that I think is the most serious about tackling affordability issues. We're willing to talk about the extent to which climate policies are escalating costs without actually helping the climate. And so we really need, we're willing to say those things and to ask those questions. And then on the public safety front and dealing with addiction, the escalation of addiction through safe supply is something that we will question and challenge very, very assertively. So those are all reasons, I think, to vote for the Conservatives of BC.
Yeah, just like what I said, you're very honest and you're brave enough and to say all these kind of things. You know, nowadays and probably it's not politically right. So you're brave enough to speak it out, to tell people what you're really thinking. And I think that's, you know, that's the topic many parents and many people, they're really you know, talking about, or they are really thinking about. So I hope you can get reelected and resolve all the problems, and whatever your party is, BC Conservative or other parties, I think, you know, the purpose for you and to run this election, you want to help people. You want to help BC. You want to help our tenants or buyers or people living in BC and to get a better life. So that's, I hope that's, I think that's the purpose you are running, right? So the last question. So if people want to vote you, and who can vote, and where, and when, and how? Okay,
so obviously citizens can vote. Only people who are living in Vancouver Mount Pleasant. And they'll know that they're living in the riding if they're receiving a voter's card, or else also they may have received this document in the mail this week, which is a voter's guide. Voting day is June 24th. Or that's the last day to vote. There is advance voting from June 16th to 21st. And this publication and their voter's card will tell them about where the polling stations are.
Perfect. So thank you very much for sharing all these kind of stories and ideas. And so people, you are listening and watching, and if you agree Karin's idea and policies, definitely you need to vote Karin and on June 24th, right?
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
Really enjoyed talking to you. Morning.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Bye for now.
Yeah.